It's the Final Word Cricket Podcast. Adam Collins with Jeff Lemon, Season 16, Episode 13. First segment went too long because that's the thing we normally do.
We like doing that.
Which means we didn't get around to a number of things, including...
Nerd Pledge. Nerd Pledge. It's supposed to go in the first segment, but who knows when you're going to get very emotive about the retirement/forced retirement of I don't know if I'd say beloved by some and not by all champion player. Anyway, let's talk about another beloved by some and not necessarily by all champion player via the medium of Nerd Pledge. This is a revisit, actually, for Simon, open inverted commas, old, close inverted commas, Trafford. Simon Old Trafford sent in £2.05 a while ago. The way this game works is someone sends us a sum of money in a numerical configuration that relates to cricket in some way. We try to work out what it means. We didn't get the 205. Bharat had a crack at it. Simon has sent through a note.
He has indeed. I quite like this. I'm just trying to bring something up here. Now, where are we? We've got the note in from Old Trafford that reads, Bharat hit the post with my 205 pledge going for William Gunn. That's a name that jumps out for me from back in the old days. The Road Dog Jesse James, the Badass Billy Gunn, the New Age Outlaws. That's for Bharat mostly, and any other wrestling fans from the late 90s. The number relates to the scorer of the highest test score by a Nottinghamshire player. Over to you.
Over to me. This must be Joe Hardstuff, whose main appearances previously on Storytime and The Final Word have been us making very juvenile jokes about somebody with the name Hardstuff, because sometimes we can't help ourselves, and that is how things go. But a fine cricketer, one of a series of fine cricketers. There are three Joe Hardstuffs. There's his dad, Joe Hardstuff. There's him, Joe Hardstuff, and there's his son, Joe Hardstuff. They're really
There's only three Joe Hardstuffs. Three Joe Hardstuffs.
Well, there were. They all played cricket to one extent or another. Now, Joe Hardstuff did play at Nottinghamshire, and we did a story time a few weeks ago about Arthur Carr, who was the great captain of Nottinghamshire, and how he brought through Harold Larwood and Bill Vose as his attack leaders, who then went on to be the attack leaders during Bodyline. And that fabulous Knots team that we talked about with a lot of characters we've spent time with on Storytime, like Dodger Weisel, who died on a dance floor, the Staples brothers, the great stationary mavens, and Larwood and Vose, the stick it up their nostrils combination. Joe Hardstuff, it came in as a kid. Now, this is the interesting bit. So Larwood gets spotted by Arthur Carr and brought through, and then Larwood spots Joe Hardstuff batting in the nets, I think, when he's 16 years old, and he's like, this kid, he's good. And he gets Arthur Carr on side and says, let's get him involved at Notts. So by 19, Joe is playing for Notts. He debuts, he makes 53 not out on debut. It's in a washout with Lancashire, but still, it's a good start. And he doesn't debut under Arthur Carr. For some reason, George Gunn, not William Gunn, is captaining that game, and Arthur Carr is off doing something posh, I guess. Carr is back in the captaincy position for Joe's second game, and Joe starts making big runs. He starts having big seasons of county cricket, 1,600 runs, 1,800 runs, through the middle of the 1930s, and then he breaks the 2,000-run barrier a couple of times near the end of the 30s, and then it's 1939, and as tends to happen in these stories, World War II arrives, buggers up people's cricket careers, among other much more important things, and Joe goes off to fight like a lot of them do. He spends 3 years on the Burma front, which I can imagine would be a pretty rugged place to be. You've got the Japanese trying to reach India through Burma after they've sort of occupied / forced an entente, there's that word again, with Thailand, and they go through there and launch into Burma to try to get to India. It doesn't work out for them, but there's a great cost on that front for all of the parties involved. So he's around there. He plays a little bit of cricket in India during that period as well. Does Joe Hardstuff, including a game for the Europeans versus the Parsees in that old kind of pentangular style tournament that we come back to all the time. Makes 150 out of 300 even, an exact 50%er. And then after conceding a big lead, makes 76 not out to draw the game. Mainly, I want to know more about a player for the other team, for the Parsees, called MF Mystery. I'm a motherfucking mystery. I don't know much about him, and that's why his name is what it is. You will enjoy this, Adam. This wasn't his first trip to India. If you flash back to 1937-38, he played with Lord Tennyson's 11 in India, which means he's up against many of the early Indian greats like Vijay Merchant, Lala Ramanath, Syed Mushtaq Ali, and Vinu Mankad. And also these are tangents here, but I couldn't help it. In a game against the Maharaja of Patialia's 11, he plays against a fella called Frank Warne, who is playing for the Maharaja's team, who's the son of Tom Warne, who we've talked about on the show before as well, who both played a lot for Carlton in Premier cricket in Victoria and both played first-class cricket for Victoria. And they were both leg spinners, part of the Warne leg spinning history, even though they're not related to Shane Keith as far as we can tell. Right. The more important bit of this is that on this tour, the reason I brought this up is that Joe Hardstaff gets man-catted. It is the first man-cat in first-class cricket since the 1800s. Wow. So it's the first one in like 40 to 50 years. And it comes on the first match of the tour, in his first innings of the tour, in a game against Sindh, where they've made 348, and a bowler called Karim Hussain, who will end up playing 17 first-class matches and take 49 wickets at 21, not a bad record. He gets the opener out, Neil McCorkle. Hardstaff comes in at number 3. He makes 2 runs, and then he gets man-catted. And I really want to find out more about what happens in this game. But apparently the crowd get on the bowler's back. But Karim says, stuff you all. He goes on to take 5 for 81, secures a first innings lead, and they have the better of a 3-day draw. So Joe must have really been taking the piss to get run out that early in the first innings of the tour.
Yeah, the Kadeem instead of the man-cat. What could have been if it were on a slightly higher profile stage?
Kadeem the Dream does it at the non-striker's end and at the striker's end. That's what you want. That's proper nice material working at both ends. So Joe, in the middle of the 3 Joes, he also debuts, his test debut comes in a series where his dad is umpiring. I don't think in his match, but during that series, previous Joe Hardstaff ends up being an umpire. And Joe, middle Joe, this is, he's not a regular. Considering he averages over 46 in Test cricket, he's surprisingly in and out of the side. He plays 23 times over 15 years, either side of World War II. His debut series, he plays 1 Test out of 5 when South Africa visit in 1935. He plays 2 out of 3 when India visit. He plays the whole 36-37 Ashes, which they end up losing 3-2 in the 5th Test. He makes a couple of tons against New Zealand, but people don't really count New Zealand as a test level side at that early stage. He gets 2 tests in the 38 Ashes. He's has a huge partnership when Len Hutton makes the 364. He's batting with Joe Hardstaff, who bats through to the end of the innings when England make 950 and declare. And then he gets left out of the next test engagement, which is a trip to South Africa, and the war happens. He gets straight back into it after the war. The first test after the war is England versus India at Lord's in 1946, and that's where he makes the 205 not out. That's the source of our pledge. Wins them the game by 10 wickets. And, then he goes back to being a bit part player. He 46-47 goes to Australia and plays 1 test in that series. He gets 3 out of 4 when they tour the West Indies, where he provides a lot of encouragement to Andy Gantome, who famously, used to hold the record for the highest test average until Curtis Patterson got past him. Andy Gantome plays 1 test, makes 100 and never plays again. And Joe Hardstaff has a bad falling out with Gubby Allen, who's the captain on that tour. And I think that gets him in our good books because I think Gubby Allen's officially on the final word shit list by this point of our explorations of his life and career. Gubby Allen says, "You'll never play for England again." They have a fight in the dressing room and they both tell each other that they're shit. And Gubby says, "You'll never play for England again." And guess what? Gubby never plays for England again. That's his last series. And Joe does. Joe gets 1 more test when the Invincibles tour in 1948. But
all right.
It doesn't go too well. He makes a duck in the first innings. England get done for 165. And they do bat big in the 3rd innings, and he has an important partnership making 43, but they're out of the game by that point. So,
which test is that? Do you have that written down?
The first one, yeah.
The first test, right, okay.
So he gets that 1 chance at the start of the series, and they go, nah, Joe Hardstaff, too old, he's done, and pension him off, and it doesn't help them because Australia keep winning everything. So he carries on in county cricket until 1955. For some reason, he goes to New Zealand for 2 summers in the late 1940s and plays 5 first-class matches for Auckland across 2 summers and dominates, unsurprisingly. And for Nottinghamshire, 14 more centuries in 3 seasons from 1950 to 52. So he's pretty good towards the back end of his career. He does taper off for a couple of seasons. In his last 3 seasons, the average is down in the 30s or high 20s, and he calls it a day at the age of 44 with 83 first-class tons. So he probably would have made 100 tons if not for World War II.
Yep.
And there's probably a few in that camp too. And before he's finished, which is interesting, he finishes in 53, 1952, his son gets an offer to play for Notts while middle Joe is still there. And his son knocks it back and joins the Air Force. So we've got another cricket legend with a high-ranking Air Force son. We've got Arthur Conyngham. We've got Clary Grimmett. And now we've got Joe Hardstaff Jr., who becomes an Air Commodore. But he does have a first-class record because he plays a couple of games with the Free Foresters. So you do have 3 generations of first-class playing Joe Hardstaffs. There's only 3 Joe Hardstaffs, and that's your 205, Simon Trafford.
Lovely work. Thank you, Jeff. I enjoy whenever we go to Knots on a Storytime answer. It tends to be a good one. You can send your pledge in patreon.com/thefinalword. Join our Patreon community. A whole bunch of our Patreon members from Discord were at the Oval over the weekend watching Surrey and Warwickshire. So it's not just a way to support the show, although that's hugely appreciated, and we wouldn't exist as a show today if not for what people have sent to us over the years. But it helps support Storytime as a show and as a thing, which I know a lot of people really enjoy. And you get to make friends in real life on Discord. And last but not least, we've just about worked out the arrangements for our Scotland tour in August during the Fringe. That will be a playing tour. We've got 3 fixtures, sort of, I would say, heavy pencil, heavy grey lead. And that will be a nice way to spend 3 nights at the Fringe. A whole bunch of players who went up last year, which was a rollicking time. So patreon.com/thefinalword to sign up to that, be part of all of our various adventures. Jeff, we got quite a bit to get to in segment 2, I realise now. Let's do some admin before, well, I say admin, administration, cricket administration.
Yep.
When the Jimmy announcement was being, well, I say made, Ali Martin breaking the story on Friday afternoon. Will McPherson was breaking a story as well in the background, which is of some significance. So what they wanted within 2 weeks of the 51-49 arrangement that we were discussing on the show a fortnight ago was, in principle, non-binding agreement from the board, so that the 18 counties plus the MCC, and they got it. They got a 15 of 19 gave it the green light to continue the air quotes direction of travel, where we'll end up in a situation where 49% will be privatised and 51% going into the hands of the hosts for the 800 teams.
So 49% of each 100 team will be sold off to private investors. And
correct.
8 sides will keep 51%, which then screws the other sides who had some investment in those teams but don't get any of the reward.
Depends how you interpret it. That's certainly one way of seeing it. So, for example, the team at, let's go with London Spirit, MCC, Middlesex, Northants, I think, fed into that. Maybe Essex as well. I never quite know who goes where, but still, yes.
Surrey and Kent for the Oval one.
Surrey and Kent, that's a better one, actually. It's complicated at Lords because of the MCC piece to this, and the MCC have the ground, not Middlesex. But anyway, it's what happens with the 51% that's more of interest to me. Will the host counties sell that as well to give an entire organisation 100% that's not them or a part of it, give them a controlling stake? That's what Will was speculating.
Are they allowed to? Is that
they are definitely allowed to. Yeah, that's it. So Will was speculating the other week that some will probably keep their 51% and make the most of that they can. Others will sell it because why would you want to be, let's say you're an IPL franchise, why would you want 49% when you can try and, all you need is 2% more and suddenly that's a controlling majority. On the other hand, do you really want to be running a club in the UK when you're based a long way away? So various different threads to this, but the new detail, 10% of the 49%, if you like, has to go to the recreational game and the rest will be shared by the counties. The first 275 mil, this is assuming a £425 million windfall. The first 275, it gets broken up 19 ways. So all of the counties plus the MCC. The next 150 goes to the 11 non-hosts. And then anything above 425 gets broken up 19 ways again. So that's a way of making sure that the smaller counties, many of whom are in serious financial situations at the moment, will get a really decent slab of what they expect might be
Right.
4 to 425 million. I do wonder, though, will the non-100 counties make it a condition of them agreeing to this in the long term that they get the full whack, that they get all of the 425? It feels like a decent negotiating position. If they said, yeah, okay, the 8 grounds or the 8 hosts can share in whatever they sell. They can sell their 51%. They can have their fun,
or they can keep making revenue from it if they can make it
from
profitable.
but we won't sign up to this unless you give us the entirety of it instead of splitting up the 275 19 ways. Let's split it up 11 ways. I don't know.
It'd be
maybe?
it'd be a fun inversion of things to have like Northamptonshire holding the revolver to the ECB's head, and going, well, okay, well, it sounds like you really want to do this. How bad do you want it?
We're going to watch this space. We might get Will back in a couple of weeks to keep us updated because it's happening right now and it'll shape the next 10 years of England cricket. So it's a big story. Staying with cricket administration, Jeff, an email press release hit my inbox this week and I immediately sent it on to you and said, Jeff, you do your thing. ICC announces extension to global partnership with Aramco.
A 4-year extension to its global partnership, one of the world's leading integrated energy and chemicals companies, if by that you mean the single greatest contributor to human emissions since the 1960s. Yes, it is one of the world's leading. The statement says this: following a successful 18-month term, Aramco will continue as a premier partner of the ICC, and the partnership will include all men's and women's senior and under-19s events, blah, blah, blah. The themes at the core of the partnership are performance, with a focus to engage a younger audience of cricket's 1 billion fan base, as the company expands its mission to deliver affordable, reliable, and more sustainable energy to customers around the world. Incredible. Incredible stuff. Sustainable energy, that's what they're all about. Aramco produced last year 12.8 million barrels of oil per day. Per day. 12.8 million barrels per day. And they are also on a trajectory trying to increase that. They've been looking at that over the last couple of years. How can we sell more of it? How can we pump it out? That is apparently a more sustainable energy platform. It was a big, exciting year for Aramco. They ended up with profits of $121 billion in 2023. They acquired Valvoline's global products business.
You know what I mean.
You know what I mean. And they also bought a bunch of other shit as well for various amounts of billions of dollars. Aramco, of course, if you haven't been reading the notes, is the national oil company of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, your friendly local kingdom for executing a lot of people and cutting up journalists into small pieces when they write things that Saudi Arabia don't like, and then getting away with it because they have a lot of money, especially if you're a golfer. That is all completely fine. The statement goes on to say, the partnership has seen the impactful delivery of the Aramco Player of the Match, with the Aramco Player of the Tournament and Aramco Power Performances assets launched from 2024. What does that mean? Hard to parse that, but from marketing speak, it means that they give out a Player of the Match award with the company's name on it. That has been an impactful delivery.
They should.
Before Aramco, Adam.
Do you know what would be really
Aramco,
impactful?
Players of the Match. Nobody listened. No one paid attention. It wasn't impactful. What would be impactful?
It would be, they could go the old Saudi Arabian bone saw, give them one of those for being player of the match.
The gold
really
player.
link it in.
Yeah.
They call that an integration these days, don't they?
Integration. Mount it on maybe like an ivory plaque, like shoot an elephant at the ground, just to make sure that everybody knows that you can afford to do it, and then use the bone saw to take off the tusk, and then mount it on the tusk, something like that. Been reading some fun stuff about the Line, about the new sort of crazy futuristic city that they're building, and how they were building it in the desert in the middle of nowhere, apparently, and yet, and this is a little familiar from Australian context, there are a bunch of villages with people already living in those areas, and they've all been evicted, and their villages have been bulldozed, and those who've protested too much have been executed. So, good times happening there. It's all about an impactful delivery of the Player of the Match award, and very exciting that they're adding a Player of the Tournament and a Power Performance asset to celebrate elite performances at ICC events, which will continue over the next 4 years. Through the ICC's hospitality platform, Aramco will use the program to drive business objectives. And that is indeed one thing that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia does very well, drive business objectives.
Yeah, in other words, they'll be able to get selfies with the players, and that's great. Good on them. Everyone wins. No, look,
No.
I'm interested. I'm interested to see how this. Well, first of all, if this has been renewed, this first blew up before the 2021 T20 World Cup. I want to say, Jeff,
Australia, I think
the one in Australia. Sorry, 2020. Sorry, quite right. So 2 years. There was so much pushback then. The fact that it's been renewed so quickly demonstrates that they don't care.
I don't care.
The people who are collecting this money
this is
don't care.
What
There's
we've
no
seen with everything involving the Saudis,
That's right.
with Live Golf, with what's
Yep.
with the way the tennis tour is being integrated, with
Yep.
Newcastle Football Club. No one gives a fuck because there's so much money attached. If you have
So there will be
you buy out anybody's qualms.
So there will be eventually what we've talked about before, more direct investment in the T20 circuit. That's just coming, right? This is paving the way to normalise this kind of investment, and because it's so much, it's just it's thin edge of the wedge. And anyway, the other part is that where I'll be interested is the extent to which, if at all, any of the players choose to voice any concerns with this, because players are feeling emboldened to talk about things that they weren't before. More by the year, Usman Khawaja did a fantastic Good Weekend interview with Dan Brettig. That I know they've been working on that piece for like 6 months. So when it actually comes to fruition, it's a sizable chunk of journalism from Daniel and Usman and his family and close people working, with the journalist on it. And you get a sense of how willing Khawaja is, and he uses his social media platform a lot. He's happy now to talk about stuff that he never would have deigned talked about years ago, especially in relation to racism. Well, there are cricketers around the world who feel quite strongly about carbon emissions. Now, this is more than that. I'm not saying it's just about climate change, but this is part of that story. Whether any of them might go, nah, actually don't fancy it, and find some way of subtly protesting this. Probably not. Because it's not in their direct interest to make themselves the target. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if at the T20 World Cup that starts in a few weeks from now, if there is an example of a player from around the world that says, nah, this is bullshit, and takes a swing at the ICC and accepts the repercussions, whatever they happen to be.
I think it's unlikely because it's too difficult, because it's a bit more convoluted, because the chains of culpability are a little longer. It's not quite as simple because companies like this can make these arguments. They can point to their greenwashing bullshit. They can say, look, we're investing in hydrogen, we're investing in renewable this and that, while they're still increasing oil production. And there's always the slip way to blame it on the consumer. Oh, well, you're attacking this company, but you use oil, you drive a car, you do this and that. Yeah, we do, because we live in a system that has been explicitly designed by these companies to make sure that the only way that you can operate effectively within it is to consume their products. That's not an accident. They're not benevolently providing something passively that people are demanding. They've spent decades lobbying and building societies that rely on their products. That's how it works. And they've also spent decades slow pedaling and making sure that they completely slow down any transition to anything else. So, yes, they're completely culpable, but they managed to shield things well enough that it's hard for a cricketer to feel in a position to know enough, to feel confident enough to really get out there and be upfront about it. And also potentially they're compromising a meal ticket that will dwarf anything that they've ever earned elsewhere in their careers once a Saudi league gets up and going.
In other shit things related to the T20 World Cup, while on that theme, although on the cricketing front, the Dutch aren't able to pick Colin Ackermann and Roelof van der Merwe for the World Cup squad. Clearly, both are in their best 11, but their counties are not releasing them. So Durham and Somerset making sure that they have picked the blast ahead of the World Cup. And it just feels so small-minded. I mean, I can't think of any other country that would be put into this situation. We were in Holland a couple of years ago for World Cup Super League matches where all of their county players were made to stay put. England's players obviously weren't being forced to play in the blast. And I understand the complexity of this because the counties are the primary employer for these players. It isn't easy, but surely there's some better way than denying someone like Colin Ackermann or Roelof van der Merwe, these are the two in question, the chance to play. Now, interestingly, from a Durham perspective, Baz de Leede has been released to play in the World Cup, as has Fred Klassen from Kent. So it's not a one-size-fits-all situation, but yeah, it does strike me that this is a problem that continues to repeat on itself for the Dutch when we're having a tournament or anything relating to the national team clashing with anything relating to what's going on in England.
Yeah, I mean, do you think, would the rationale be that there's been a glut of T20 World Cups and these players have been able to play a couple in the last couple of years, and so it's not as urgent for, and particularly, they're both older players who've been around for a long time. Maybe for de Leede, it's seen as more pressing, given that he's sort of approaching the peak of his career rather than being on the other side of it. I don't know what the rationale would be to release one player but not the other if it wasn't sort of done on that kind of basis.
It could be that. It could be that, Roloff's nearly 40, but we saw last year how important he was to the Dutch team in the 50 over World Cup. I don't think, unless I'm missing something, I don't think he's been overtaken.
No.
It's possible he's been overtaken, by the way. I don't want to sound too emphatic on this. It might be the case that he isn't in their best 11 and they're managing the puzzle pieces best they can. But
I think
you would think that
the parsimony of his bowling and even his work in the field, even at that age, he's such a gun fielder and such a presence for them, and just the most combative player in the team. You talk to anyone in that Dutch side, and they talk about him as being the driver and the heartbeat. So I can't imagine they would voluntarily go to a World Cup without him.
And Namibia won't have Jean-Nicole Lofty-Eaton with them either. Now, this is I don't know what's going on here, Jeff, and I don't want to speculate at all because I don't want to get in strife on this, but disciplinary reasons. Sorry. So he hit Namibia's fastest T20 100 earlier this year, a 33 baller against Nepal. He was captaining Namibia at the African Games in Ghana, but he was sent home from there. We don't actually know why he was sent home from there, but that ongoing issue has led towards them not selecting him for this World Cup. So Gerhard Erasmus, will be leading the Namibians again, as he did in the World Cups of 2021 and 2022. They made it through.
Gerhard Erasmus.
Yeah, that's right. So they made it through in 2021 to the Super 12s, and they should have made it through in 2022 as well. They botched it against the UAE at the Qatari in the final game of the preliminary stage. Otherwise, they would have progressed, having beaten Sri Lanka, which was a big win. But, it's a strong side with David Visa still front and centre. We had him on the podcast the other week, and a lot of names here that we know well. I'm sure Ruben Trumpelman will be leading that attack and doing a great job of it. JJ Schmidt, Jan Freilich. There are players here who know what it takes to win games at major tournaments, and hopefully the loss of Lofty-Eaton for whatever reason, and I'm sure that'll come out in the fullness of time, doesn't make it that much harder for them, because Namibia's rise is a great thing over the last 15 years or so.
Ireland and Pakistan, a little bit of joy for the men in green, and the men and the women in green have had a torrid time of it the last couple of years, really, since I suppose that T20 World Cup in Australia was the last time that things were upbeat for Ireland. But they've knocked over Pakistan, who made 182 for 6. Babar Azam made 57 off 43. I suppose people would criticise the scoring rate afterwards, even though he was going at 130 plus. Craig Young got him out, took 2 for 27 across his 4 overs, and then Ireland chased it with 1 ball to spare. They got there with 5 wickets down, and Andrew Belburney opening the batting, 77 off 55. He doesn't have the burden of captaincy anymore, and he has seemed a bit more at ease with the bat in recent times. Harry Tector and George Dockrell did their job through the middle of that chase, and Curtis Campher reverse ramping away at the end, 15 not out off 7 to ice the game. They've never beaten Pakistan in T20 cricket, I think. Is that right?
Yep, never beaten them in a T20 and hadn't beaten them in any international since the 2007 World Cup, which got this whole thing started, St. Patrick's Day in Jamaica. So this is quite substantial, I think, for Ireland. They play Pakistan in the World Cup. They're in the same group. They play in Florida. So the fact that they know they can beat them this close to a tournament's a big deal. I mean, Ireland did win a test match a few months ago, so it's a complicated 2024 for them so far. There have been reports they're playing on these expired contracts. They certainly were month to month. So they're trying to get that sorted before the World Cup, but the negotiations are quite tense there. But, it shows that for all of the challenges of being a full member, which we've documented in some depth in our dedicated Ireland episode a few weeks ago, they still are within touching distance, and players like Balburney are world class. And they should have won the second as well. They got 193 for 7 batting first. Lorcan Tucker, who's another Irish player who's been on the final word in the past, made 51 from 34. Then there was Tector. Kurt was back again. Delaney in the middle, who gave them that platform. Shaheen Sharafridi got clouted for 49, albeit after taking 3 wickets. But Pakistan have this 195 for 3. They chased it down inside 17 overs. They were 13 for 2 early on when Hume got Babar Azam, and it feels like Ireland are on their way to a 2-0 series lead and series win. But amateur Amdram king, Mohammad Rizwan, who we loved so much in Australia late last year,
did a
made
one
75
rendition of Hamlet. His
75 not
Ophelia
out
was
from
stunning,
40.
I've got to say.
He only faced 46 balls for a 75. And Fakir Zaman, welcome back, Cotter. 78 from 40. They put on 140 in 13 overs to win that game. And then Azam Khan, the wicketkeeper, clouted 30 not out from 10 balls to make sure they had an early bath. And the final T20 of the series, Jeff, is on today. So we're recording in the morning. But, that's being played at Clonshalf. They've been clever about how they use their club grounds this year because they have to. They've had the test match announced against Zimbabwe. It's a pretty important year for Irish cricket. And, their women didn't make the World Cup, but their men will put in a pretty decent showing in America, I reckon.
Well, Azam Khan, it was nice to see him actually get an innings away. He's had a pretty torrid time of it at international level in the opportunities that he's had in T20 international cricket. The big lad, the son of Moin Khan, their former wicketkeeper, but he's an incredibly powerful. People are always focusing on his fitness, but he's such a powerful striker of the ball. There's a reason why they want to give him the opportunity to succeed in this side because he's the kind of player who could rip up a team in 10 deliveries like he did here.
The Pakistan women have also been broadly in this part of the world.
This was so frustrating. I was following this on the Saturday, and as soon as I saw that England were 4 down for 11, I was like, I know exactly what's going to happen from here. Someone will cobble together a couple of partnerships, they'll put a score together, and it'll be too tall for Pakistan women to chase, and that is duly what happened.
Yeah, it was all happening, wasn't it? Mai Bouchier, Danny White, Alice Capsey all out. I think it was 8 for 3, then 11 for 4 when Freya Kemp and Heather Knight got involved in a hideous mix-up. And it was Kemp to go. But Knight, who's been captain for 8 years now, this is very much her team.
Yeah.
She top scored with
way long. Like most captaincy stints are usually sort of presidential. They're about 4 years and then players get tired. Like to do 2 terms, 4 more years and to still be going is extraordinary.
Well, it's her team, right? So I suppose the question is, at what point does she want to become the senior pro? Because she's not going to not be in the best 11. She's clearly as important as she's been through her career. But, there'll be the T20 World Cup they play in Bangladesh, the next 50-over World Cup, Jeff's next year. So you can see a world where that might be the jumping-off point for her. There's a Women's Ashes in Australia this year where they'll be they've moved them off kilter, which is a good thing. So she'll be leading that England team. So 3 set-piece events, the 3 highest-profile things for English cricket are on the way. But, they did have to recover. Knight made 49, Jones 37 from 27, then Danielle Gibson smashed 41 not out from 21 with Sophie Eccleston to get them to 163 for 6. Pakistan had Wahida Akhtar and Sadiq Iqbal taking those wickets early on, but then I wouldn't say the wheels fell off. It's just that England did, as you say, what they can do with their added depth. But Pakistan were chasing pretty well too. The scenario that you paint has England make, their 163 and Pakistan completely lose their shit. They didn't. They were initially, at least, they were 79 for 3 in the 11th over. And that's, you would say if you were win-vising that if you didn't know the 2 teams and the background of the teams, you would say the chasing team is more likely to win a T20 from that platform.
Yeah, but that
However,
relies on some hitting depth at 6 and 7, that kind of thing, which they don't have because they're top heavy.
Well, that's right. And they lose 7 for 31. So they're bowled out for 110. Inside the 19th over, England, this was all brought on by Sarah Glenn. Really happy to see her back from concussion. She's a class spinner. Doesn't always make the first team because England are blessed with spinners having Eccleston and Charlie Dean as the front 2. But when she plays, she's always in the game, takes 4 for 12. Lauren Bell leading the attack, took 3 for, and that included a great catch from Amy Jones off the inside edge when they needed it. And Eccleston, you can rely on her going for sod all, 1 for 17 from 4. So they've got 2 further T20s. They're at Northampton Leeds on Friday and Sunday, then 3 one-dayers after that, back at the smaller grounds of Derby, Taunton and Chelmsford. And just on the way out of this, Jeff, last week we were speculating that after the women's qualifier in the Emirates that they might put the Sri Lankan women in the group that just looks a little bit lighter on. But, of course, that didn't happen. So Sri Lanka are in the tougher group with Australia, India, New Zealand, and Pakistan, and Scotland get the group with England, the Windies, South Africa, and Bangladesh. And of course, both groups are strong in their own way, only 2 groups of 5, but I reckon if you stick Sri Lanka on turning surfaces in Bangladesh up against England, the Windies, and South Africa, they'll win at least one of those 3 and give themselves a chance of making the semis. But it feels harder when they're going to have to get beyond one of India or Australia.
It's just going to make it all the sweeter when Chamari Adapatu holds up that trophy, having come through the tougher group and stormed home in the final. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Jeff, last break, and we're back with our wraps of domestic cricket, both in England and India.
This is the final word. It still is. It's still the same people. Jeff Lemon. Adam Collins, who has been keeping a weather eye on the Rochelle Hey-Ho Flint Trophy. A couple of rounds in the England women's domestic white ball stuff before we get to the county and the IPL.
Yeah, they've really packed them in. They've played, I think every team now has played 6 games, and that's all in the space of about 3.5 weeks. So there was a round on the 4th, which goes back a week and a half, but we didn't get a chance to deal with it too much last week. There have been far more runs in the last 2 rounds compared to the first 4. Diamonds beat the Sparks in a thriller by 1 run at Birmingham. That was thanks to Holly Armitage, the captain, taking 3 for 40. The Sunrisers were defeated by the South East Stars, who chased down 223. Sophia Dunkley dropped from the England team, and we'll talk about her a bit more in a sec, but made 67 as soon as she was dropped, which is a great sign there. Maddie Villiers, 2 wickets for the Sunrisers. She's another one of these England spinners who's there and thereabouts. The Southern Vipers are back on track after losing a game in the previous weekend. They made 295 for 5 against the Western Storm, who nearly chased it. They got to 291 for 9, so a thriller there.
Scores are too big in this tournament now. We've got to change some of the regulations. There's no balance between bat and ball, etc.
Charlie Knott made 102 for the Vipers, and Heather Knight, the England captain, fine-tuning for that T20 series, top scored with 62 for the Western Storm. The Blaze were bowled out for 174 by the Northwest Thunder. Mahika Gower from the UAE, 3 for 33. Great to see her starting her season well. And the Thunder won by 1 wicket. They chased it 9 down, so a series of close results. So Kirsty Gordon, who was back playing for England recently, took 3 for 25, but Seren Smiler made 58, the top score for the Thunder, to get them the points. This was the best game of the round, was the Diamonds and the Stars. Another high-scoring, duke it out. The Diamonds, 311 for 9. Holly Armitage, the aforementioned, top scoring was 66. And then the Stars, Dunkley, 130 in the chase, but they fell 3 runs short. So that would have been the biggest chase ever in England women's 50-over domestic cricket, including county stuff as well. But not to be, but great to see Dunkley's responded with a half century and a century. So we're seeing exactly what the selectors said when they dropped her, that she's clearly in their best 6 batters. There's no ambiguity around that. She'll probably captain England one day, but it's good. It's good tension that a player as good as Dunkley not making runs for England, you've got to go and make them at domestic cricket, and I'm really pleased to see she's doing that for the South East Stars. The other games that were played late last week, the Vipers up against the Sunrisers, and the Sunrisers beat them, as they did to start last year, which was a landmark moment for that club who'd struggled so much in the first couple of years. Well, they beat them again here. The Vipers 211, with Elvis leading the way with 53. But the Sunrisers, Jodie Grucock, who we've mentioned her name 3 or 4 times now in these rounds, made 56 as well to get them over the line by 3 wickets there at Radlett. The Western Storm made 275, another big score for them. But again, we're seeing these big scores threatened and chased. The Blaze, they lit it up. They win by 4 wickets thanks to 106 not out by Nadine de Klerk. Like, we think of de Klerk, Jeff, as primarily a swing bowler who can make useful runs at 9. Yeah. Well, at the level below, she's good enough to go up the list and make an unbeaten 100 in a match-winning effort.
Yeah, I've liked her batting for a few years, and it's always been it's been an under-delivery on promise at the moment, because she is a really clean hitter, but she has started to make some scores, some slightly more significant scores for South Africa in the last few months. A few of those have bobbed up, so hopefully this is a trending up sort of thing, because she always looks to have the eye and to have the cleanness of contact when she swung through the ball. So hopefully this is bigger and better things from here.
And the other team in the Midlands, the Sparks, did something similar. So the Blaze chased 276, and then the Spark chased 287 in the final game of the round. The Thunder made 284 for 7. Emma Lamb, England international, she'll be there in the longer form stuff, 107 from 104. Then Eve Jones, who it seems, I don't know how old Eve is now, but feels like I'm surprised she's never played for England. 136 not out to win the game for the Sparks from 148 balls. She often captains the Sparks. She got them to finals day in the Charlotte Edwards Cup a couple of years ago. But yes, the Sparks get the job done. That last over was bowled by Kate Cross. That's not for nothing that they were able to hold their nerve and get the points. And in terms of where that puts everyone at the end of this block, they play some more games in June, July, then another block in August to round out the group stage. The Sunrisers, who took 2 years to win a game, they're on top. The Sunrisers are on 19 points. Southeast Stars and the Vipers are always there and thereabouts on 18. The Vipers, who've won 3 of these, and likewise the Diamonds, who tend to be near the top, are on 17. There's a big gap to the Thunder, the Storm, the Sparks, and the Blaze, who are all still in single digits, having won 2 games apiece. So 4 teams have won 4 games, and 4 teams have won 2 games. And we'll return back to that, as I say, in the end of June into July, when they return after they've played a bit of the other formats, and then they'll get into the 100 and on it goes.
They say that the darkest hour is just before the dawn, and so it proves for the Sunrisers. Too many fire-related teams for me. You've got Sunrisers, you've got Stars, you've got Sparks, and you've got Blaze. You've 4 out of 8 are various kinds of fire, and then throw in the Welsh fire in the 100. You've got to bring in some other elements. You know, there's a storm, there's a water element there, fine. Thunder, I suppose you could say, was an air sign, and Diamonds, earth. But that's 1, 1, and 1 versus 4, and then you've just got the random Vipers thrown in there, the one animal team in the entire lot, which just does. You're in the wrong league. Go and play in an animal league. It doesn't make sense here. There's, I wish there had been better consulting when they set this thing up, because it just doesn't work for me.
Well, given that they're being abolished at the end of this season, they move to the counties, there's a chance to regroup on this. Although I do hear, and Charlotte Edwards has kind of alluded to this as well, that the Hampshire team might want to take on which will be the Division 1, the Tier 1, team. They might want to keep the Vipers name, which I kind of get that, right? Like, the Vipers have been so successful. They won the first Kia Super League. They've won 3 Rachel Hayhoe Flint trophies. They've won the Charlotte Edwards a couple of times. They've had an extraordinary run.
Are there any Vipers in England? I thought England's only snake was the adder.
Yeah, I don't know is the answer, but I wonder whether
Vipers in the Abu Dhabi league, the UAE league.
Yeah, that's true. It does complicate things for players. Just to start,
Vipers. Adders are in Latin versions. They're a Vipera berus. So I don't know. I don't know enough about the taxonomy of reptiles to tell you what's going on there.
I'd imagine all of the Vipers players will end up with Hampshire, in the same way that all of the Storm players will end up with Somerset, right? You'd naturally gravitate towards the Tier 1. The only twist on that is there's some Welsh players in the Storm. Do they just wait it out 2 years and play for Glamorgan? Because we know Glamorgan are getting a team in 2027. Do you go back to Wales and kind of be at home and acknowledge that you're missing 2 years in Tier 1, or do you go to Somerset? I don't know, it's kind of weird.
Chennai's out for a year, so you go and play for the Kerala Tuskers or whatever it was, and hope you get paid, and then you end up back at the Super Kings when the match-fixing scandal is blown over. At least it's better than being called a Seax or a Pear, or like some of the absolute dredge names that they have in the county championship, which we should get to, because we need to get to the end of this show. Division 1, I'm shocked to see that Surrey have gone back to the top of the table. Wow, what a real surprise. Just really keeps you coming back for more, the county championship. Full points, 24 points from their latest outing.
Their last 3 games, they've gone 24, 22, 24, and now they've got a lead of 21. So having started with 2 draws, they've got that buffer. Yeah, quite. They have that buffer that they had all of last year's back again. And they did I did this game. They dominated Warwickshire when it mattered. It was a really good game of cricket for half of it. Warwickshire got 343. Ed Barnard made 100. They managed to push back after Surrey took early wickets. And then with the ball, they took a bunch with the second Newey. And I think they had Surrey like 8 down and still just a little bit short of first innings advantage. But they lost Craig Miles celebrating a wicket. He took 3 in a hurry with the second new ball. He rolled his ankle and he was out for the rest of the game.
Worst
and
way
then
to get injured, isn't it? It's like the old
how
James Faulkner finger in the eye, Brad Haddon thing. Like,
This did come up. We talked about celebrating Catherine Brunt in the women's Ashes in 17 doing an ankle or an Achilles when, and then there was a footballer who Norcross brought up who Tony Adams dropped in the League Cup final of 1993 and broke his arm. So a few of these did the rounds on our streaming coverage. But from there, once Surrey got ahead, Jamie Smith, fuck me, this guy is an absolute gun. He made 155 and it's as good as you'll see. He's this far away from being in these test squads. He will be soon enough. Had Sean Abbott for company. Abbott batting at number 10 because they used Kemar Roach as a night watchman.
Yeah.
Made 50 not out in no time at all. And they got that lead. And then Kemar Roach took 6 for 46. Some glorious reverse swing action there from the West Indian. Wow. 8 for the match. So they only were chasing 89 and won early on day 4 by 9 wickets.
In professional cricket, that's interesting. It just didn't reverse for about 3 or 4 years there. And now it seems it's starting to go again. Curious.
Yeah. Well, it looks like reverse swing to me. That the movement from Kemar was so late that it didn't feel like conventional swing. It certainly felt on the coverage like we were seeing reverse, hard without the close-up cameras. But Lancashire's shocker continues not to beat them by 9 wickets at Trent Bridge. And this is due to
Spirit of Joe Hardstaff. They channeled him. 3 Joe Hardstaffs.
Yes, you got it. You'll be pleased to hear that Haseeb Hameed was front and centre of this. So Lancs did well in their first innings, 331. Jennings made 91. The bloke we mentioned earlier, Dylan Pennington, took 3 for. And then Knotts, Stone also took 3. The other man we were briefly talking about in segment 1. Knotts make 503. Haseeb Hameed carried his bat, the new captain, 247 not out across 459 balls. He's still only 27, Jeff. His time will, I'm sure, come again.
Does he look?
Haseeb Hameed.
How does he look like? Does he, because he always had the low hands thing that always brought his technique into question against bounds.
Looked good on the clips. I mean, all you can do is go on the highlights, right? I mean, he looked fluent, and he had help from Ollie Stone. He made 90 batting down at number 9. So the forgotten man in all of this has been Ollie Stone and played his role with bat and ball. Nathan Lyon wasn't playing for Lancs. CA managed him out of that game, which you see a little bit, which seems a shame given he's only playing 7 that they've managed him out of 1. But anyway, that's a conversation probably for another day. Lyon said during the week in an interview that Australia would have won the Ashes 4-0 if he was playing. I love that, it's probably, I don't know. It's probably true. There's a decent chance they would have won one more test match because they lost too narrowly if Lyon were playing. But I quite enjoy that Lyon's confident enough in his skin these days to say, you know what, let's be realistic.
Well,
I'm the best off-spinner in the world. We probably would have won one more if I played.
I think we can safely say there's no way that Nathan Lyon would have been battered around Headingley by Ben Stokes in a test match. I can't see that happening. I can't envisage a situation in which that would have taken place. So yes, had he been there ahead of Murphy, maybe things would have been different. But also, had Murphy not had Stokes dropped about 4 times off his bowling, things probably would have been different too.
And had Murphy been used better, I still come back to that. They used Murphy at the wrong times. Lyon would have bowled earlier, which would have got it. Anyway, it's a long time ago now. Can't believe that's nearly a year ago, by the way. Can you believe it's nearly a year ago since we started? Anyway.
In a way, it feels even longer, and in a way, it feels recent.
I'm saddened by that too, though. I love that was such a great series. And anyway, Lancs made 252 in their second innings. Matthew Hurst made 100, but Pennington 4 more. Perfect time to be taking 7 wickets in a game when you got Shiel Berry, the august Shiel Berry, writing articles saying it should be him replacing Jimmy. So he sort of nailed his timing. George DeBell wrote a similar article last week. I must admit, I've not seen Pennington bowl in the flesh yet, but there's a lot of excitement around what he's giving at a slightly higher. He's swinging the ball at a slightly higher pace, so he might be a good combination there. And not to chase it, 81 was their target. Appropriately, Haseeb Hameed batted through, 24 not out, so the perfect game for him, not to get their first win. Lancs still yet to get one on the bottom of the table. Jeff, the most extraordinary match of the round, I think, even though it ended in a draw, was down in Kent on a flat one. And you look at the scores and it doesn't mean an awful lot, but Worcestershire not only playing, but that tribute before the game, which clearly meant so much to all the players who took part in them around the country. They all wore Josh Baker's number 33 on their shirts, and they go out and make 618 for 7 declared, which I thought was just extraordinary in the circumstances. Gareth Roderick, 117. He was tapping the badge when he made the 100. It was very emotional. Adam Jose made 90. Jason Holder, 123 not out. Matthew Waite, 100 not out. They put on 225 for the 9th wicket to make sure they got to that massive score. Kent batted for equally as long for 400, with Jack Leaning making a slow 179 not out just to make sure there'd be no ability for them to lose the game. But yeah, I just think from a Worcestershire perspective that they were able to take the field in the first place, and then summon whatever it is they needed to summon to perform that way away from home before it ended in a stalemate. That's pretty special.
Yeah, and they'll have the 33 on the shirts for the rest of the season as well. So, they'll have that reminder every time they're going out. It's reminiscent a bit of 2014 and that Australian team, and the big score they piled up, hundreds from Warner and Clark and Smith, and everybody being elevated by the emotion of the situation rather than hampered by it.
Last game in Divi 1, there was a draw at Southampton. Durham's bowlers, they look pretty good on paper, but they're just not getting the wickets this year that they got last year in Division 2. So Hampshire get 503. This is a flat track as well this year down at the Rose Bowl. Tom Press, happy for him, getting 100, part of that Hampshire Academy. Ali Orr, 126, moving from Sussex. He was the guy who got run out at the non-strikers end 3 times last year. Off the fingers, you might remember, Jeff. 3 times in a row, I think it was. But he's moved clubs and enjoying a bit more luck this year. Cal Parkinson took 4 for 176 from
seems to be the
43.
lesson there.
Well, no, not really. I mean, I think it's one of those where if you get run out backing up, you're doing the right thing. I've always, you know what I mean?
It's a humorous comment.
But some people say that. People did get stuck into Ali Orr last year saying his backing up wasn't good enough because it kept happening. How about he's just extremely unlucky to have it happen 3 times? Norcross was tracking very closely as Matt Parkinson was going around at Kent bowling 1 million overs. So was Cal Parkinson at Southampton, and whether as 2 brothers they'd gone for, twins indeed, whether they've ever seen twins go for as many runs on the same day before. I'm not sure whether Sampson solved that, but you can see where Daniel's brain was whirring.
What was the Beds's worst day?
Yeah, exactly. I doubt it was as bad as that in terms of runs conceded. You know how I said Dylan Pennington took 7 wickets at a good time? Probably not a great time for Potts to take a nunfer. You know what I mean? Like on the other side, his Potts, I reckon, is number 1 seed.
Yep.
So you've got to, anyway, Siddle took 3 for, as he always does, having signed for Durham a couple of weeks ago. Siddle will be playing county cricket when he's 44, taking 3 for someone in Division 1, I'm fairly sure.
James Anderson will still be playing for someone else.
Yeah. Well, Anderson will be playing for Lancs against Siddle for, I don't know, whoever would he go next? He's been at so many counties.
The Wilfred Rhodes Cup, they'll be playing for, the most
he'll go to Yorkshire.
Mariners in the league.
Durham, 432, Bettingham 100. Dawson, 68 overs, 10 maidens, 5 for 184. Couldn't get a bowl at the Oval last week. Bowled 68 overs, most of them in one spell, which is wild. So, Liam Dawson doing the heavy lifting for Hampshire with the ball. And Potts got 2 wickets on the final day, which I suppose isn't for nothing in that wider context. So Division 1, Surrey have a 21-point lead on Essex in second spot, who've got a 2-point gap to Somerset. And Warwickshire stay in 4th spot despite losing. Next week, Surrey have Worcester, Somerset have Kent, Notts have Hampshire, Lancs have Durham. That's the Stokes-Jimmy game at Southport. Okay. And Outground, where Jimmy Anderson is playing for Lancashire, probably, and Ben Stokes is turning out for Durham. Okay. That I don't know whether the Outground will be able to handle that. There's going to be a lot of human beings going to that game.
Yeah. Well, let's hope Anderson takes 12 and sticks it up.
And Essex hosting Warwickshire. Only 2 games in Division 2. And, Jeff, you'll be pleased to know, after all the draws, both of them had results.
No, we don't
2 wins.
Results in Division 2. We have draws in Division 2. We have rain in Division 2. We have teams that I can't tell apart that start with G in Division 2 where nothing happens.
Well, it was the 2 Gs that took the chocolates here. Okay. Glamorgan defeated Sussex, and Sussex had won their previous 2 games, and they got up by 9 wickets. Pujara top scored with 41 out of 278, which shows how much they struggled to convert. Mia Hamza, Pakistan international, who we enjoyed through the summer, picked up 4 for. Glamorgan responded with 400 plus. Kieran Carlson, who we like to talk about, former teammate of Glenn Finkeld, 148. Colin Ingram, 170, having a great season. He's more than just a T20 bloke, Colin Ingram. You know what I mean? Like, we think of him as a T20 gun for hire, but 3rd ton this season. Jaden Seals took 5 for Sussex, having a good campaign of his own. Sussex got rolled for 188, where we saw Andy Gorvin taking 5 for 40. Bit of a late bloomer, bowling well for Glamorgan so far this year.
Is Labuschagne going back to Glamorgan?
Yeah, this is the bit here. So Glamorgan only had 58 to chase and got their 1 down. So that's a terrific result for them. Their first win of the year. Billy Root there at the end. But I mentioned Will Root. I mentioned Mia Hamza and Cole Ingram. Labuschagne makes 3 overseas this week. So I'm not quite sure how they're going to manage that. Yeah, 2 max in an 11. So I don't know. So I suppose Labuschagne just comes in and
making all the runs, and Labuschagne's been in different form for a year or so. So
I guess Labuschagne just plays and they drop Ingram, but yeah, how stiff would you be? I think, got the most runs in Division 2, something like that. Anyway, and the Freaks win, your boys, Gloucestershire, having, had all this trouble and they're still broke and, they're bottom of the ladder, but they beat Northants at Wantage Road by 256 runs. They made 400 plus.
The health of the county's finances stuff, because I found myself down that rabbit hole a couple of weeks ago, and it's ugly reading.
It is, but I mean, they were only in Division 1 a couple of years ago. I mean, I've seen them play so well, and they've done so here. Miles Hammond got 100 for them. They bowled out Northants for just 171. Marchant Delunga, another great journeyman with a great name, 5 for 42. Gloucester second time, they add to their 409 with 309 for 5 declared. Cameron Bancroft, 130 not out. You might have heard of him. You might have written a book about him.
Might have featured in a couple of books, in fact, fairly heavily. Cameron.
Then Northants were set 557, and they got 301. They batted into the
squad. Did you know that?
They got to 301 Northants, but they bowled out on the final day. Marchant Delunga, love that name, gets 3 more. And yeah, exciting for Gloucester. Their first win since 2022. They didn't get a win at all last year. Lots of draws over there at Bristol and lots of rain. So the chance to win here away from home, and they took it. And yeah, after they recorded that big loss at their AGM a fortnight ago and all the other off-field stuff that's been going on, it does feel important. And yes, pleased to see, even though they're still in the 8th and final spot, Sussex 78, Middlesex 68, Leicestershire 68, Glamorgan 67, Yorkshire 60. So a bit of a logjam there for that second promotion spot. This week, Sussex, Yorkshire, Leicester, Gloucestershire, Glamorgan, Middlesex, Derbyshire, Northants. That is the England domestic wrap. Jeff,
there you go.
Over to you. Go to India for us.
Let's go to India.
Got to go to India.
Let's keep this pretty brief because we've been going on for a while. The IPL, 7 games to go, getting spicy for the top of the table. So Kolkata Knight Riders are leading Rajasthan Royals 3 points behind them, but have a game in hand, and the game is against Punjab Kings, who are dross. So it could be 19 points plays 18 points. Heading into the final game of the season, which will be Kolkata versus Rajasthan. So 1 and 2, if Rajasthan do the right thing and actually get a win, which may not happen. So I'll give you some context here. KKR had a washout against Gujarat, so they were denied a point. You get 2 points for a win. Probably doesn't make a huge amount of difference in the end, but they also beat Mumbai impressively, defending 157. Teams have not defended low scores this season, with Varun Chakravarti taking it 2 for 17, the spinner off his 4 overs. Very impressive stuff. Meanwhile, Rajasthan, who were top of the table for most of the season, have lost their last 3 in a row, so things are going wrong at the business end for them. They tried to chase 201 against Sunrisers Hyderabad and fell 1 run short. They had Yashasvi Jaiswal and Ryan Parag doing most of the scoring but didn't quite get there. Sunrisers are flying along as they have been all season with the bat with Travis Head, Heinrich Klaassen and Nitish Reddy for the most part. Reddy's quite an exciting one because he's bowling pretty well too, and they're always looking for that all-rounder. They've had Pandya doing that job, but he's actually he's had a tremendous season, Nitish Reddy, so far. Anyway,
okay, I'm
talking about Rajasthan getting beaten up here. They copped another big score against Delhi, conceded 221 and couldn't chase it. Jake Fraser-McGurk, 50 off 20, another barnstormer for him at the top of the order. And then Rajasthan batted first and made an insufficient 141 in Chennai, the usual Chennai strangle, Jadeja, Tikshana. And Simarjit Singh, who's a seamer who took 3 for cheap and kept that score down, and Chennai chased it easily. So 3 losses in a row for Rajasthan, who are sitting second, and they've got to make sure that they win this game against Punjab to try to give themselves a chance to go past Kolkata at the top of the table and get that automatic qualification through spot. Top gets an early boost in the finals, basically. So
they get the prize second chance.
Yes.
They get to play in the second semi-final.
So So
does the winner go through? Do you know this? Does the winner of the first final go through to the granny?
Go through to an advanced stage. I can't remember if it's this.
Okay.
Anyway, don't test me on this. I'll tell you next week when I know more.
Homework for you. Which system are they using? Tell me in some detail,
like
please.
The 5th plays second. I think second plays third to go into a semi, and then the loser of that plays the winner of 5th versus 4th, which means that I can't remember. You'll figure it out from
Yeah,
there.
that's
Get the
okay.
red strings out.
Yeah, I think and from there you go to a Final Four where the winner of second and third place first, and the winner of that goes straight through, and the loser of that plays the loser of the winner of fourth versus fifth versus. Anyway, I've got it in my head now.
Something like that. Anyway, so Chennai are sitting third, Hyderabad are sitting fourth. It's been roughly that way for a while. Sunrisers Hyderabad had another crazy game with the bat. They were set 166 to chase. They made 167 in 9.4 overs, none down. So this was against the Lucknow team, the Lucknow Langers.
Sure.
Travis Head made 89 off 30 balls, and Abhishek Sharma made 75 off 28. So, 166 would be a pretty stiff chase in a T20. They did it in fewer than half the overs.
I'm interested in this Head rise because mega auction next year.
True, actually.
I mean, his timing is sensational.
He's going to go.
The fact that he's
millions.
I don't really remember much about Head's previous jaunts in the IPL. Maybe he's done well, maybe he's not. Probably not, because I expect it would have seeped through had he done well. I remember he played in 1 year when I was doing radio commentary, but we're going back years and years for that. But doing it in this particular year, I'm not sure what commitments Australia have next winter and how that might affect their availability. From memory, they've got the Sri Lanka series at the start, mid-year. They've got a Windies trip, but that won't be in the IPL window because half the Windies team play in the IPL. So it should mean they're available for it.
I'm pretty sure that to June, July, that West Indies trip.
Right.
So
and
that's fine.
And no T20 World Cup. So it will mean the Aussie guys are available to play in the IPL next year without any, like this year, without any restrictions. Right. And that would say, someone like Head could, again, I have no framework here. I'm just speculating. He might go for as much money as, say, Mitchell Starc went for this year.
He's only played, this is his third season. So he played for Delhi and he played a season for somebody else who I can't quite remember. But
that's a life-changing, I guess what I'm trying to say is this is a life-changing few weeks for Travis Head, because the multiplier effect in a mega auction and being there for the 3-year cycle and whatever, nailing it here means that it could be untold riches for him, even compared to his national contract. Well, obviously compared to his national contract.
So he played 2016 and 17. He played for RCB and Delhi, and that's it. And then he came back into the thing this year. So, cool. He might be up for $5 million next year. Who knows? Ridiculous to run that down in fewer than 10 overs, but they did. Chennai Super Kings blew a chance for some points by losing to Gujarat in another absurd scorecard. Sai Sudarshan, your mate, and Shubman Gill opening for Gujarat in the same innings, both made hundreds. How often have you seen both openers make hundreds in a T20?
Why?
It's
why is this happening?
Probably happened in a sort of mismatched T20 international somewhere, but I don't know of other instances where both openers have made tons. So Gujarat made 231. The partnership was 210. I think it was the third biggest in IPL history. Ridiculous stuff. So Chennai didn't win that game. Royal Challengers Bangalore, they're fifth. They're vaguely a chance to go up, to sneak up a spot, but they're there.
I think they reckon they're a chance. I reckon they reckon they're a big show. Speaking of, they reckon they're a big show. I don't know who they're playing, but I think they reckon they're a decent shout at getting in the top four.
I can tell you that RCB and Chennai have one game left against one another. RCB have just won 2 in a row. They made 187 against Delhi and defended it. Cameron Green actually bowled well, which has been a rare thing. 1 for 19 off 4 overs. Yash Dayal 3 for 20 after taking the last wicket. Lockie Ferguson had a good game with the ball. And then they went massive against Punjab Kings. They made 241. Kohli made 92 off 47. This time Green bowled 1 over and went for 16. So it's a swings and roundabouts game. Everyone was expensive, all their bowlers, Siraj, Ferguson, Karan Sharma. But still managed to bowl them out and got the win. So they could go up a spot to fourth if they thrash Chennai. Basically, they could flip the net run rate, equal them on points, and leapfrog them. But that'd need to be a huge win. I don't know if it's a viable, a feasible win. Or if the Sunrisers lose a couple badly and RCB win, they could go past them on net run rate and get up to fourth. But but they kind of have their.
Yeah, just to be clear, they've got their destiny in their own hands, because if they win well enough
They
against Chennai, there could be enough of a...
Yeah, but I'm just saying they could get up into that top four as well.
Oh, I see.
So I suppose fourth and fifth doesn't make much difference because you play each other, but...
Yeah. Just, I mean, you don't get home ground advantage or something like that. Fourth,
that probably is how it works. Yeah.
Right. And we brushed over, by the way. I'm really happy for Sai Sudarshan making 100 in that previous game. I know we're joking about 200s in the same T20 game for the openers is vaguely ridiculous. And, we've talked about the hyperinflation of scoring, but, he was great when he came on and talked to us on the final word last year, and he seems like a lovely young kid, and he's got a big future ahead of him. So well played him.
So Hyderabad are playing Punjab and Gujarat, who are bottom three, so they'd be expecting to do well rather than to lose, but who knows. Lucknow are 4 points behind fourth spot, but they've got 2 games in hand, so they could level that up. They're playing Delhi today, so we'll kind of know by the time this podcast goes out that will have already happened, whether they've won that and they're still in the hunt. They also have to travel to Mumbai. And Delhi are 2 points behind fourth spot, but they've only got 1 game in hand, and their net run rate's in the gutter. So I don't think they're a chance to make it from here. But Kohli's top of the pops on runs, 661 runs, the usual thing of people gesturing at the fact that he's on the top of the runs list, and RCB have struggled in the season. But he's scoring at a strike rate of 155, which is no slouch rate. So in that top 10 run scorers, he's faster than all of the next-gen Indian Tyro players. So you've got Ruturaj Gaikwad, Sudarshan, Rian Parag, Shubman Gill. They're all in that top 10 for run scorers, but scoring slower than Kohli. So I find that bit interesting as well, that people are always obsessing about his strike rate, but he's going along pretty nicely.
Nice work, Jeff. Nice wrap all told. Just other bits and bobs here. I think the England players come back
Phil Salt's
pretty
leaving,
soon. I think Jax is leaving as well. I read somewhere. Livingston has left already. And that's partly to do with his knee. So I think what we're going to see in this next...
will come back in for RCB when Will Jack's out. That's probably the likely.
I guess so. And then you've got, you'd imagine so. He's been out of the side. Now Jax is not there. I think that's what happens. So Jax, Livingston, there'll be other white ball England players who come out of cycle, which will mean it's actually quite an interesting postseason here. We've seen this in the Big Bash League occasionally, where the overseas staff changes quite a bit when you get to the playoff stage. So for all of the great work,
KKR, because Salt opens for them, he's going to come out, and Ramanullah Gurbaz, the Afghanistan opener, will come in as the keeper bat. So
right. And what about
and at the top of the order?
Does Josh play the whole way through? Probably not.
I think so. Well, he'll have to come out for
as captain. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of them. So I'm not saying that England players will dictate the fortune of the IPL, but they won't. It'll have an influence. Whereas the Australian players are staying through. I think. I don't know why there's an England distinction being made there. Camp. The training camp's happening in Australia, but they must be doing the England training camp over here in England. That must be the genesis of all.
Yeah,
all
but
this.
I think the England camp is earlier than the Australian one.
Right. Oh, the Australian camp's on. It's the 5 guys who aren't in the IPL and like a few state players who are with them in Brisbane, which must be quite good fun. Anyway, Jeff, that's the end of the IPL wrap. It's also the end of what's turned into quite a long show, which is okay. We had a lot to talk about, and you had strong views on Jimmy Anderson, which needed 20 minutes to get through in their entirety.
I've been stewing on it for about 2 days, and I'm like, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind.
And we had to talk about...
Let him play.
We had to talk about rumco, bully, rumco. I think Winnie can probably hear me saying this from nursery. She loves singing that. That needed our attention as well. What also needs our attention as a community is the drive to 30 grand. You've heard the whole show now. I'm about to go on this long run. Chip in. It's in the show notes. 20 quid, 50 quid. Whatever it is. I mean, I'm just picking 2 numbers out of the sky here, but whatever you can afford to chip in, we know it goes to a great cause with the tabs. We're ever so grateful to Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City as our primary partner on all of our programs throughout the course of this year. And our Patreon Discord world is thriving. I've received 2 more texts while we've been discussing the way of the world today, committing to the August trip. So that's our next final word thing up in Scotland. So we can't stop and we won't stop. And a huge part of that is patrons. So contribute to the story times, which there'll be 2 of this weekend. Jeff and I will be doing one of them. Daniel and I will be doing the other one. There is a lot going on in our world. So become part of it. Patreon.com/thefinalword. That's it for me. Anything more from you?
I'm done. You're done. We're done. It has been the final word. We will see you very, very soon.
Bye.